Welcome to the Winner's Playbook. Every winner needs a game plan, and this one's for you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. Josh here, and I'm joined with my regular co-host, Billy. Today we're going to be talking about something a lot of people dream about but don't always know how to pull it off, and that is changing careers without going broke. Whether you're thinking about leaving your job, changing a passion project, or starting fresh, we'll break down the steps to do it smart without torching your bank account. Billy, of course, this is a timely one, but before we jump into the topic, mate, what's the latest on your end? And I wouldn't mind an update on how 𝗪𝗵𝗶 went with his iPhone purchase through school. What's the latest there?
Yes, yeah. Well, for anyone who missed last week, my son came home. My 6-year-old came home. He's in grade 1, and he said he bought a phone off another kid, and he had this brand new iPhone box, and he reckons he paid $150 for it. Which, mind you, he does not have $150. He'd done some deal where he was going to get cash for his next birthday, give it to this kid. Anyway, he's opened the box, and there's this smashed phone in there that's clearly not going to work. And funnily enough, I spoke about that on a TikTok post, and it got about 300,000 views. So it's obviously resonated, and there's people on there telling all sorts of crazy stories about what they did when they were kids in primary school and what their kids have done.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, the phone went straight back the next day. The teacher was all over it. Phone went back to the other kid. No cash has changed hands, fortunately, and just hoping we don't have. Hopefully that kid doesn't rock up asking for his $150. So it's all good. Nice little life lesson, hopefully.
There you go. That's what a funny one. I suppose that was just a handshake agreement between Maxi and the other kid. I assume there's no contract signed.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Yeah, is there any sort of penalties or I'm not sure. But so far we seem to have gotten away with it.
There you go. That's funny. Well, I was actually I was doing one of the Beyond School presentations that we do, and I was down at Officer Secondary College yesterday speaking to 170 students, and it's just funny you mention that because I was talking about things that you can do through high school and side hustles and so on, and it was a couple of kids that I asked a few questions at the end, and one guy cuts hair, but he does it in the school toilets. He's got a little barber business going from the school toilets. And I was like, how good's that? He said he earns over 30 grand a year doing it as well. Not just from school, but out of home as well. And, in year 12, I was like, God, that's doing a lot better than I certainly was. And the kid was chatting to me after, and he's like, oh, who fades up your beard? I was like, oh, I just cut it myself these days because I don't have any, obviously, hair up top. And I was like, oh, look, give me your details. I'll come through for a cut at some point in time. Maybe not in toilets, but I'll come.
Bathroom might not be ideal. Yeah.
No, hopefully he's got a better setup at home. But no, that was good. It was a really good presentation actually down there with the students. I think a lot of them got a lot out of it, which was cool. And then obviously we're off to Singapore tomorrow as well, which is going to be really exciting. We've got an action-packed week ahead next week, meeting a lot of people in the financial services sector, some other business owners over in Singapore as well, and then I'm going to tack on an extra week holiday, which I'm actually looking forward to. And the climate is going to be nice, I think, a nice warm 30 degrees, so a little bit better than what we are experiencing down here in Melbourne.
Yeah, amazing. Have you got any other schools on the schedule, on the tour?
Yeah, we've actually got one scheduled towards the back end of this month. Yeah, towards the back end of this month. We already got one lined up, another year 12 cohort just around the corner from where we are now. And we're trying to hit another at least five schools over the rest of the year. So anyone listening, of course, that ideally we're trying to speak to anyone. Ideally, year 12s is where we want to be, because we're trying to speak with them. The program's beyond school, so it's trying to prepare for life after school. So we're trying to get them at the point where they're about to take the big leap out of high school, and a lot of them are generally working as well, so they can start thinking about their finances. But we have presented it to year 10s and 11s, but I think we're nearly touching over 500 students so far that we've presented to, which is cool. So we've had a couple of big cohorts as of late, and hopefully get some more, and we can maybe reach 1,000 at least by the end of the year, and then we can keep on growing from there. So just throw that amongst everything else we're doing. But obviously not what we're going to be talking about today, because we're talking about switching careers and how to do it right, and what are some of the considerations to look at when in doing this. So in terms of talking about some of the biggest money challenges when switching careers, Billy, there's obviously some really obvious ones there, but what comes to your mind, or if you've had conversations with clients in the past before, because I think we all have, around what they're doing in their career and what should they be doing moving forwards. What are some of the considerations or challenges you discuss with clients that are thinking of making the move?
Yeah, well, I mean, the obvious one is it usually comes with less income, right? When you change career, And I think people often underestimate how long it can take for them to get back to what they were earning, like if you're starting fresh. Um, and in that new workplace, you're now a junior often, right? Rather than someone
Yeah.
who's got experience and you might be a manager or something like that. Now you're going back to being the new guy or the new girl.
Yeah.
So that can be tough, and you need to be ready for that lower level of income. So you don't want to just dive into it and then get that first pay packet and then try and figure it out from there. You really need to plan that out.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it's a good point. Like a lot of times when you are switching in careers, sometimes of course it could come with a pay rise, I guess. In my own experience, when I left a trade of which I was a concreter, which was never going to be my career anyway, but was doing that at the time when I was doing my studies, and then when I pivoted into the financial planning industry, I took a 50% pay cut, which I was fine with. I think, and one thing I said to the students yesterday is a lot of your earlier jobs, you're just getting paid to learn. Like don't expect to get the big dollars up front. Like you're just virtually getting paid to learn at the beginning of your career. So just soak it up. And I was willing to take what anyone would pay me at that point in time because I had no office experience, and therefore getting into the industry was actually quite difficult because every job ad I was looking at was wanting some sort of an office experience, and I'd only ever been in a trade or worked in security. So I had no chance, but then I found a place that would take me with no experience, but it was a really low income. But I was like, hey, I'm willing to do that because I know what I was earning then was nowhere near going to be what I thought I was capable of into the future. So I just got my foot in the door. But yeah, normally would come along with a pay cut. I think some other considerations there is, really looking at your lifestyle and the timing of when you're doing that. Like if you're in your 20s and you don't really have much obligations, you don't have a family to feed, you don't have any debts or a mortgage, you can take a punt. If it doesn't work out, it is what it is. If you're staying at your parents' house, like you may not be paying any board or rent or anything of sorts. Like you can actually take a bit of a punt. I think the later or the older you get in life, kids come along, debts come along, it starts to sort of force your hand, and it does make it more risky doing those types of moves because it's not just you have to worry about. You've got family to feed, you've got debt obligations, you might have schooling fees or childcare or whatever it may be. So I suppose your ability to take risk probably shrinks. Now, it's not saying that some people just still won't take the risk because we all have our own tolerance, I suppose. But if you put your sensible hat on, I guess when you've got kids in a family, it does get a bit more risky when you start to make those moves. So there is definitely a time around doing those, and I guess also just making the decision, based upon money as well is always a dangerous one. Like not just jumping jobs just because there's like say another employer just going to give you an extra 10 grand. I'll unpack it around some other areas that we're going to talk about, but that's a real dangerous one. Just always making the decision just based upon the perceived pay packet, because I think there's a lot of other areas that you need to consider when you're working at a business around culture, opportunities, growth, and so on as well. That should really go into the dictating of what that decision may be. But there's some of the ones that come to mind. And what about, Billy, if we talk about like actually preparing for someone if they're going to quit their job, what are some of the things that they need to be thinking about to try and best prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, on that, like, how do you financially prepare? I mean, I think there's two main things you can do. One is to have a huge buffer, right? Like have a whole bunch of cash sitting there. It's like a runway. So you give yourself, okay, I've got this cash here. As my income's going to drop, I can slowly draw on that until I get my income back up again. And that can take some time. So you need a pretty big buffer if that's your approach. And the other one is just massively crushing your outgoings. So like, what are your main expenses? It's usually housing and maybe vehicles, right? So if you've got 2 cars, you go down to 1. If you don't have kids, then it's your living situations. You need to go into a share house, go back to mum and dad. You just need to like crush your outgoings and just have very minimal expenditure through that period. Yes, if you have a kids and all that stuff, it's much harder, and that's where you're probably leaning more on, okay, I need a bunch of cash in the bank before I can do this. I think they're really the 2 main things. But certainly you want to plan that out, not just dive into it and then run out of cash and panic. And probably the last thing on that is like a plan B too. So don't burn those bridges. Like, the plan A is I'm going to change career and take this other path.
Yep.
What if that doesn't work out? What's your plan? Can you go back to what you were doing before and get your income back up again?
That was an exact point I had written down, like, don't burn your bridges.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. And I've got a client at the moment who's actually going on a massive career change, living in Australia currently, and he's just moving over to the UAE. And yeah, he's done kind of what you've said, Billy, where you have a nice big buffer. So he's actually having to cash out on a lot of his investments and things that we've built up for him, but he's taking a bit of a punt, moving over to the UAE to chase some bigger dollars and a different life for the family. But yeah, he's bringing with him a nice buffer, because there's a period of time where in the work that he's going to be doing, he might not get paid straight away. It's quite commission based. So he's doing exactly that. And I think also just understanding, your needs and wants through that period, like you said, Billy, like unnecessary expenditure, holidays probably aren't on the cards, maybe go from 2 to 1 cars, really, breaking that down and doing an actual budget is very helpful. Like, to figure out what your needs are to survive, do a budget. Go on the Money Smart website where you can download the free budget planner and actually fill in your expenditure, so you get an understanding as to what your actual fixed obligations are versus, say, your discretionary spending that you're just splurging out on whatever it may be. Do that dollar for dollar. I generally try to do it at least once a year, and it's always eye-opening to see how that looks. So I think doing a budget, understand the difference between your needs and your wants, have a buffer, like you said. There's some other things that you could do, like if you are in a situation where you've got a home loan, family and cash flow could be tight there as well. Like, you could consider maybe speaking with your mortgage broker, and this is not going to be for everyone, but maybe you haven't refinanced your home loan for some period of time. You could reset your loan term. Not ideal for the situation, but if it is something that is going to help you to get the better career or push you further ahead in life, and you just need to temporarily reduce your cash outflow, you could consider resetting your loan term. If, say, you're 5 years into your loan term, reset it back over a 30-year term. That will actually lower your monthly repayments. You could even have some equity sitting in the property, of which, again, I'm not saying do this, but there's plenty of options where you could even release some equity to have a cash buffer, so you can go and take the punt or whatever it may be on whatever you're going to do, whether that is starting a business or a career change, or considering even going interest only on loans or a loan if you've got one. Again, not an ideal solution longer term, but if you've done this correctly and you've planned this out, and say you've got a year's time, you think you're going to get back to your earnings capacity or more or whatever it may be, there's some other options that you could consider there. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And of course, to make those latter ones happen, you need a good mortgage broker. But yeah, there's definitely other options there. Billy, any others that come to your mind before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, so like society's really conservative on this. You know what I mean? Like, it depends on the nature of the change. If it's a career change where it's not necessarily going to lead to way higher income, it's more just something you want to do, that's one thing. But if it's a change where, like, you're going into business with someone, and if the play works out, it's going to lead to massively higher income.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing wrong with borrowing a bit against your home if that's what you need to do to make it happen.
Yeah.
Like, you only live once. So it's rare to hear someone regret trying these sorts of changes. It's very rare. Even if it doesn't work out, people rarely regret it, because they learn so much from it, and now you won't die wondering type thing.
Yeah, well, that's like one of the biggest.
If you're miserable in what you're doing, then you need to make a change. And
exactly.
It often means taking a risk, but usually the risk pays off, especially if you've planned it out and you've got a plan B and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if we're talking about then, like, should you go all in, or do you ease into the career slowly? I'll kick off in terms of what I had here. Like, for me, my mindset would be like, once you make the decision, you just go. You don't sort of hesitate and dwell on that. I'll just, like, if you've made the decision, you go for it. Trust your gut there as well, and listen to your intuition, I think, can sometimes help. And we were listening to a podcast that we've circulated amongst the business recently on the Diary of a CEO with 𝗬𝗪𝗓, and he has some really good points in there in terms of, like, actually how you create a business, and where you can come up with ideas around, from maybe pain that you've had throughout your own life. Could be a business idea that then other people have had, or a passion. But he had this good concept of, sometimes the grass is not always greener on the other side, and you got to be careful with that. And I can use a real life example of someone I know recently who's made a career move. And basically, what the idea is, everyone knows the saying, like, the grass is not always greener on the other side, or maybe it's perceived to be greener on the other side. But sometimes the grass looks greener on the other side, but you can't see that the soil beneath that is absolutely toxic, and it looks good. But then you get there, and then you realize it's, the grass or the vegetable patch or whatever it may be is just laid on shit, and then it dies out, and it's not good long term. And an example I'll use, I won't name names, and I'll just change the story slightly to protect this person's identity, is they moved from a big firm and they've gone into another, probably not as a big firm, in the career field that they're working in. And yeah, the culture, from what this person tells me, is just toxic. Like what they do on a week-to-week basis absolutely blows my mind. And it's a big business, and they have the higher up partners and owner in the firm, like doing these things of which are just contributing to a really toxic culture, and staff are kind of getting together, and it's quite a party culture, and it's a really big firm. And I'm like, this person moved because they were going to get more money. And so that's occurred. But then, yeah, quickly found out that this is a very, very different beast to where they were working before. And yeah, took it for perceived more opportunity and more money. But I think there's a lot of other ways that you need to look at if you're changing career, around where you're working. What does that career progression look like? The business that you're at, like what's their growth outlook? What is the culture? What's the opportunity? Because you could find a firm that's going to pay you an extra 10 or 20 grand, but what if the business isn't growing whatsoever? The leadership is, they're not go-getters, they're stagnant. Like, what does that mean for your career longer term? Whereas you might be at a place where maybe the dollars are a little bit less at this point in time, but they're doing so much, they're growing at a rapid rate, and there's going to be a hell of a lot more opportunity that comes alongside that. So there's some things that come to mind on that side of things. Billy, what about for yourself?
Well, yeah, I can speak to personal experience. I went for more money once in my career, and I'll never do it again. I did it 15 years ago. I just went, okay, who's going to pay me the best salary? I took that job. About 4 weeks in, I was like, this is a mistake. Like, I can see why they need to pay more,
Yeah.
And that's it. Since then, I've moved for less money to get myself into a better position. So less money short term, but obviously the plan is more money long term, and a better culture and more job satisfaction. So it looks like to me most people need to make that mistake at least once in their lives to realize. And the other mistake the other trap I'd say is more common is just staying in the same job for a really long time and just not having the guts to pull the trigger. And that's what we're talking about now. You need to do it.
That one's a good one. I've had two conversations, funnily enough, that you mentioned that last one, around like being too comfortable. And it's actually a really dangerous position to be in when you're too comfortable, because there's not enough pain there to push you to change, because you feel like you're in a nice spot, and then you just get complacent, so you don't change and you just keep on ticking over. There's like not enough like outside forces or input to push you and move you, and then you just get complacent and you just stay the same. Like, I think that's if I was in a position, like, I would rather be either in a lot of pain for like that, because it would force change. Whereas if you don't have that and you've just got that comfortable, then you just kind of tick along and you live that life of I suppose mediocrity. And I think it's a dangerous position. I see some clients fall into that trap where they're just comfortable, and there's just nothing pushing them to grow or change, and they stay as is. And it's dangerous because they're just leaving a lot of money on the table, and without something actually pointing it out to their attention, which is sometimes what a good advisor or mentor.
We raise that with clients sometimes. We give them a nudge, because it's funny. We can see that looking from the outside in. You can see that, and one of the obvious signals is when they're just talking about how soon can I retire? I can't wait. But it's not because their retirement's going to be awesome. It's because they fucking hate their job and they've been doing it for 28 years in the same employer.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think we might have already covered this one off, but like in terms of one mistake people make when changing careers, like when I said earlier about, just changing purely based on higher wage, you got to look at career progression, business growth, culture, opportunity that a business actually holds. Is there any others that come to your mind there, Billy?
No, there's some practical things, like obviously you have to prioritize your family as well. So that's obviously a key thing. And if you are looking at doing any of these changes, clearly if you have a partner, they need to be on board. You need to sit down and they need to support you, particularly if it's going to be a drop in income. It may mean you're more heavily reliant on your partner's income. So that's probably the other thing to note. Like, it's not, if you've got a family, it's not just about you, it's about your whole family. But also don't use that as an excuse not to take any action, because it's also not good for your family if you're doing this job and it's miserable and you're not excited about your own future. So.
I couldn't think of anything worse than waking up every day and actually hating what I did. Like that's a when you look at how much time you spend, even if you work an average 9 to 5, which most people at Link, I would say, don't work a 9 to 5. I would say, and if I've
actually seen you up in the, because I've been coming and going to the gym early, and I've been looking up and seeing you up in the window there at about 6:15 in the morning this week. So I don't think you need to worry about that at the moment.
No, not at all. But look, when I stumbled on into the industry, like I actually figured out like this is actually something that's fun and I enjoy it, and it just became a passion. And I seriously reckon I've worked every day in some way, shape, or form probably since around 2020, I would say. Like I enjoy it. Now, sometimes it's not like massive hours every day, don't get me wrong. But it's like I don't know, it feels like a bit of a game and a puzzle, and particularly working with clients, it's like they're always different puzzles, and it's quite fun, and it's definitely a fulfilling job. And that's what I would say is just, it's not always about the money. Like you actually got to find something that does make you feel good, touches the soul, whatever it may be. And that's, I think, what I then found with financial planning, and ultimately haven't looked back, because, a third of your life, you're working, another third you're sleeping, the other third, maybe there's a third of that third you're in traffic, driving around all the time. And then you've got time left there with your family. So if you can't have fun and enjoy who you're working with and what you're actually doing, God, I couldn't think of being in that position. But I know there's a lot of people that are probably out there that are in that position, and maybe hopefully people then listening to this, that maybe it prompts change in their life or has them thinking differently around that.
And probably the last thing on the sticking with one job for years and years and years, I've seen multiple cases in the last year, people in that boat, and they've gotten a redundancy out of nowhere. So they've been in that job for 22 years. They're like, yeah, pays well, I get flexibility, I'm just going to do this. And then they get, in these big corporates, they don't give a shit about you. They get called in and it's like, yeah, pack up your desk, you're out tomorrow. And it just, like their whole plans are like, they have no other plan, right? There's no plan B. So it's like, you're better off being proactive about this rather than complacent.
Yeah, no, I agree. And in closing out then, Billy, like what's advice for someone who's scared to start over? I think we've probably covered most of the points, but if you were just kind of giving your final best take and summary of what you would say to someone, what would that be?
Oh, well, it's you only live once. You've got one chance. So what you're doing now, is that what you want to be doing for the rest of your career? And the second one is, if you plan this out and think it through, you won't regret it. Even if it doesn't work out perfectly, I don't think you'll regret it. So take the plunge.
Mate, that's pretty much what I had. I said, don't make a decision out of emotion, plan carefully and trust your gut. So I think there's a lot to be said amongst all of that. And I hope everyone that has been listening does get a lot of value. Now, we're probably going to actually have a little break from the podcast over the next week or so. We probably won't have a podcast out next week, but we will be back live as soon as we can once we have returned from Singapore with a lot of learning. So we might close it out there. Guys, changing direction takes guts, but it doesn't have to blow up your finances. With the right plan, you can chase a new career and still stay on track. If you've enjoyed the chat, hit subscribe, leave a review, and send it to someone who's thinking about making a change, because if you share the podcast around, it very much means a lot to us. We'll see you next time on the Winner's Playbook, and Billy, I'll see you in Singapore.
Disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.